Hi everyone, it's Coach Fabi here, and welcome to another installment of Bedside Babble, filmed, as you can see, from my very own bed in beautiful Montreal. I'm a really firm believer in synchronicity. So when a topic keeps popping up in my conversations, it's a pretty clear signal to me that I need to explore it further. And as you may know, this is actually how many of these talks come about. Another thing that I'm super interested in is just identities in general. Which are the ones that we take on, which are the ones that we create, how they serve us, how they are detrimental to us sometimes. So, when a topic about identity just keeps popping up in my life, of course, I had to jump on it and dig in. And this topic, this identity, is actually the one of athlete, which I find extremely interesting. Um, who's an athlete? Who can claim that identity? Is it something that you lose, or is it something that stays with you forever? Who knows? So the first conversation I had on that topic was actually last week, last Tuesday. So every Tuesday I give an outdoors class for the employees of a local hospital. And at the end of the class, as we were walking from the area where we do our cool down to the hospital building, I was discussing with one of the participants who was telling me about recovering from knee surgery. And at some point, he said very apologetically, well, like I used to be an athlete. And I actually stopped him right then and there and told him, like, no, you did not used to. You are an athlete. You may not be in the shape that you used to be. You're recovering from surgery. You're dealing with life factors that you did not have when you were younger and probably engaged in more athletic activities. But the athletes that's right there, is still very much alive, and he is the reason why you show up and you do the work and you do it with discipline and dedication. And I found it extremely interesting to see that someone could think that they'd lost the right to call themselves an athlete. And I can sort of understand it. If we're talking strictly identities, I, for years, would say things like, oh, but I used to be a writer. I used to be a dancer, thinking that those parts of me were no longer alive. Whereas they might have, been lying dormant, but they are still very, very much a part of who I am. Another conversation that I had on the topic was with one of my private coaching clients. So she's an older adult who came to me earlier this year, very, very deconditioned with a serious physical condition. And we've been working every week together, several times a week, and she is now in very good shape, even for someone who didn't have any physical issues. So what we've been working on lately, a move that I've introduced to her, is weighted ball slams, because it's appropriate right now where she is, and it's been interesting for her to get used to them. So the weighted ball that we use is actually one that bounces back. So it requires not only strength to slam it on the ground, but also a good measure of coordination to be able to pick it back up as it's bouncing up, and repeating the movement in a fluid fashion. And it was interesting because at first she said that she was a little bit intimidated by the ball, but quickly she became very comfortable with the movement, and she's telling me that it's now one of her favorites. What I found interesting through that is that we got to talk about, using balls afterwards. And we had a similar story where, the really not athletic kid who has really, really bad hand-eye coordination is always the one being picked last at school when you're making up teams. It's a pretty typical story. So being in a position to use something like a ball brought up a lot of, those old stories. But to me, that was also the perfect opportunity to redefine your relationship with it. You know, because you're no longer in grade school, you're no longer playing dodgeball. You're a grown adult in a gym, taking fitness into your own hands and able to do something different with it and able to actually develop your athleticism. And I thought it was, you know, sort of an interesting reversal where someone never considered themselves to be an athlete and just discovered that, well, maybe it is an identity that they could take on and that it would serve them beautifully. So I thought I'd just, you know, introduce you to sort of both sides of that story. I'd love to, you know, I'd love for you to tell me what you think. Do you consider yourself an athlete? Do you consider yourself to be a former athlete? Do you see yourself as someone who's never been an athlete but could become an athlete? Let's discuss. You know, take a time to leave me some of your words in the comments and let's get the conversation going. In the meantime, I will talk to you soon.